Let's talk about Ross chapter 6 here. Ross chapter 6. And in chapter 6.1, we're introduced to the concept of quiescent letters. Quiescent letters. Do you see embedded in that word is the root for a very important English word that you know and maybe have used with your own children? What's the word?
Quiet.
Quiet. Very good. Whenever the kids are actually being quiet, they're not making any noise, right? And we have some letters in Hebrew that will actually become quiet or silent under certain conditions. And these are considered weak letters, which mean they don't have their staying power, and they can end up quiescing. So to quiesce is a verb, and then when a letter has quiesced, we call it quiescent. Okay, it's a quiescent letter. That's an adjective. Now, we're not going to look at all of these in this little section, but aleph, hey, vav, yod are consonants that are fairly weak and can quiesce under certain conditions. And I want you to think about this for just a moment. When you pronounce a consonant with your mouth, like the bet, your lips are coming together, b, 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 right? And there's strong contact between the two lips to create that b. Think about the chet, the chet. That's you're getting a lot of friction there in the throat, right? Chet, lamed, cough, right? Those are all strong consonants, but take a consonant like aleph. What sound does that make? It makes a. Well, what part of your mouth has to come together to make a? Nothing, right? It's just a little flap called the epiglottis. Just has to flap there. Okay, that's a weak consonant. Very easy to lose it. Think about the H sound. Ha, ha. What part of your mouth is coming together to create a ha? Yeah, hardly anything's moving, right? Ha, ha. What about the vav? Now, in modern pronunciation, we're going to put the bottom lip up to the top teeth, right? V, v. But in the ancient production of this consonant, it was really a w sound. W, w. What's happening there? My lips are rounding, but they're not really making contact with each other, are they? W, w, w. And think of the yod. Yeah, 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 yeah. The yod, there is some movement of the tongue there, and your mouth is moving a bit, but it's not like a b or a k, right? And so my point is just to say, you can understand why these consonants would be considered weak and could lose their pronunciation, lose their sound under certain circumstances. Now, we're just going to focus on, in this chapter, we're just going to focus on the aleph and the yod when they quiesce. Okay, what situations might we find them quiescing in? Let's take a look first of all at these two words that Ross gives you in the lesson, and they're the words for Ishmael. I want you to notice something interesting because it illustrates something that we've been talking about throughout our lessons so far. Okay, take a look at Yishmael here. What did we say was true of every consonant in a Hebrew word except sometimes the last consonant? They must have a vowel or a Shiva symbol with them, right? Well, the yod has a vowel, Kirik. I'm sorry, I've got my dot in the wrong place here. The sheen has its Shiva under it, right? The mem has its kametz, the ayin has its sere, but wait just a minute, the aleph, it ain't got nothing. What does that tell us? That aleph is supposed to be a consonant, right? But we learned aleph was a consonant. But this is a situation where the aleph has quiesced. The aleph has quiesced, and when a consonant has quiesced, it loses its consonantal value. Okay? And that means not only are you not going to pronounce it, but you are going to act like it's not even there in the writing system. Consonants are supposed to have vowels or shavas under them, but notice the aleph doesn't have either. Okay? So the aleph has quiesced. It's completely unpronounced. It's as if it's not there. Okay? It's as if the ayin is the opening consonant, sere is the vowel, and lamed is the closing consonant. Okay? So this is what happens when you have a quiescent aleph. Let's take a look at the second word, and this is in the beginning of the Hebrew Bible. It's the very first word, except the first word has a bet preposition in Genesis 1:1. Here's my word, the word for beginning. Notice that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 5 letters that could be consonants, right? The resh has its vowel. The aleph, that's a consonant, but it's missing a vowel point. No vowel, no shava. The sheen has a kirik yod for its vowel, and the final consonant doesn't have to have anything marking it. So my anomaly here is this aleph. There's nothing there. Why? Well, it's because the aleph has quiesced, and we're not going to treat it like it's being pronounced, because it's not being pronounced. It's lost its consonantal value, which means as consonants are supposed to have vowels or shavas under them, this one isn't really a consonant anymore. It's nothing. So it doesn't get any pointing under it. So this is pronounced re-sheath. Re-sheath. So think about that for just a minute. We're going to treat, if we were dividing this into syllables, where would we divide this? We're going to divide it here, but the aleph, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist. So you tell me, is this first syllable open or closed? It's open. When an aleph quiesces, it's lost its consonantal value, so you don't treat it like it's a closing consonant here. Okay, it's open. And sheath is closed. Okay? So, what we need to know is what happens when we have an aleph quiescing. And that brings us to a couple of examples here. And some of this will be familiar to you because you've seen this in your homework already. Let's take a word like Elohim. That's the word for what? What word is that? It's the word God. Excellent. So Elohim. Let's say I want to say to God. All right? Which preposition do I add to say to God? The preposition lamed. So I'm going to add my lamed preposition, and I'm going to add my vocal shava, right? Because the inseparable prepositions come standard with a vocal shava. Now I've got a vocal shava. It's now followed by a compound shava that has a segol element. So that compound shava is called the katef segol. And is Hebrew going to allow me to have a vocal shava followed by a compound shava? No. That is not kosher, right? So what happens here? We call this the Red Rider problem, and it is resolved in the most violent of ways. The compound shava will shoot out both eyes, and we'll replace it with the corresponding short vowel of whatever the compound shava is that did the shooting. That has a segol element in it, so we're going to put the full segol vowel under the lamed. Okay, so now we have le Elohim, to God. It would be wonderful if things just stopped right there, but they don't. What happens next is that the aleph decides that it's going to quiesce. And when it quiesces, it's going to lose its pronunciation and lose its consonantal value. And that means that it's going to lose its vowel pointing. All right? So the aleph will no longer have the compound shava under it when it quiesces. It loses all consonantal features. And is segol under the lamed here, is that long or short?
Short.
That's a short vowel, right? But the aleph has lost its consonantal flavor, and to compensate for the loss of the consonant aleph, the preceding short segol is going to lengthen and become a long vowel. What would be a good long vowel to replace the segol with? Asere. Very good. So this ends up becoming asere. That's called compensatory lengthening, and we're going to see this quite a bit in Hebrew. Compensatory lengthening. So le Elohim becomes le Elohim, then becomes with the quiescent aleph leilohim. Leilohim. All right? And leilohim is to God. Now, on the other hand, I have another word, and this one you have seen in your homework in the Ross book. This is the word Edom. Edom. You notice I have a compound shava right here. What if I want to say to Edom? To Edom, what do I do? Well, I add the preposition lamed, don't I? I add my vocal shava. What will Hebrew do with a vocal shava, compound shava sequence?
Red Rider.
Yes, Red Rider problem. Shoot out the eyes, replace it with the corresponding short vowel of the compound shava, which is called segol. Now, in this situation, we get no quiescing. In other words, our process of change stops right there, and this aleph doesn't quiesce. So I'm going to get le Edom, and that's the way you'll write it and see it. Okay?
Why is that?
Yeah, so that's the question, right? Here's the good news. The good news is that you don't have to guess when the aleph is going to quiesce, because these are identical situations, right? They really are identical situations. In one case, the aleph quiesced. In the other case, it didn't. You, as a non-native Hebrew speaker, won't be able to predict that, but you don't have to, because I'm not going to require you to do that. You're not going to be going around talking Hebrew to people for the most part, unless you go to Israel. Your job is just to be able to see words that are already written like one of these two, and to be able to know what happened. Okay? In this case, you will know, since there's no vowel marking under that aleph, you will know that that aleph must have done what? What's the word we're using? It has quiesced, right? It has lost all of its consonantal value, and it is not to be pronounced. All right. So the other situation that happens with quiescing is an initial word that has a yod at the beginning. So if we take a word like Yehuda, what does that mean? Oh, no, this is Judah. This is Judah. Yehuda. Judah. Yehuda. Okay. I want to say to Judah. Okay? So what am I going to do? I'm going to add my lamed preposition to this. But before we do that, let's just ask ourselves, is the shava under the yod a Silent or a vocal shava? That is a vocal shava, absolutely. And now I'm going to add a lamed preposition with a vocal shava. Will Hebrew allow me to put two vocal shavas together at the beginning of a word? Nay, not allowed, right? So how will we resolve this problem? It's a red rider problem. Shoot out one of the eyes. And then remember, the the vocal shava is not like the compound shava. The compound shava will shoot out the eyes and stay put and brag about it, right? Stays vocal. The vocal shava here shoots out an eye, but then it becomes silent about it. So you're not going to pronounce that shava vocally anymore. So now I've got li, no vocal noise, li, hu, da. Li, hu, da. Well, what happens next is really exciting. This is what makes Hebrew worthwhile. It's called the Hebrew love story. Okay? The Hebrew love story is when long-lost lovers reunite and become a couple again. And wouldn't you know it, in the Hebrew love story here, what I have is I have a kirik right over here spotting this yod right over here. The yod spots the kirik, and they say, "Ha! We are long-lost lovers who've been separated. Let's reunite and become kirik yod together, and we'll be happy for the rest of our lives." Okay? So when the kirik and the yod meet each other, their eyes are set on one another, they will ditch the silent shava altogether, and they become a kirik yod vowel. And so I'm left with li huda, li huda, and that is to Judah. Okay, to Judah. Doesn't this make you happy? Li huda. So le Yehuda becomes li huda with a silent shava under this yod, and then the yod quiesces and becomes part of kirik yod. And you don't write any vowel pointing under it, right? So there you go. So that's quiescent letters. So those are two frequent situations where you'll see a letter quiescing.
For the most part, that's just going to become familiar with like the words and everything.
Right. Yes. You'll see this, and you'll become familiar with it through your exposure to it happening. All right. Now under 6.2. We meet the guttural letters and resh. So this is where Ross himself introduces you to the guttural problems. And what I want to do is just point out to you that I have a handout on my website that you can download, and I've already sort of previewed these things. I talked about the Bloods and the Crips, right? And now we've got the Guts gang in Hebrew. And the Guts gang are the gang of guttural consonants that run around wreaking havoc throughout the Hebrew language. And I've got on this handout the 4 true blue gutturals, ayin, chet, hey, and aleph, which you see here. Make that a little bit bigger. And then on the other side of that slash line is the resh. Remember, resh is the wannabe. The resh is the little kid from the neighborhood that hangs around with the gang and wants to be initiated but never can quite be a guttural. But he behaves like one at times. Sometimes he causes trouble. And here's the 3 characteristics of gutturals. All right? The 3 characteristics of gutturals are, number 1, that they don't take any dagesh forte from anyone, right? So we can abbreviate this way. Dagesh forte, put a circle around it, put a slash line through it, okay? Gutturals don't take any dagesh forte from anyone. This is true of all of the members, the whole cast of character, the true guts and the resh, the guts wannabe. The second characteristic is that for all of them except the resh, the gutturals cannot take a vocal shava under them. No vocal shava. We can abbreviate that by putting a VS here, put a circle around it, put a slash line through it. Remember when we learned those compound shava symbols? Those compound schwa symbols are the replacements for any vocal schwa under a guttural. So if you ever see a schwa under a guttural, it can't be a vocal schwa because Hebrew would have replaced it with a compound schwa. So if you ever see a schwa under a guttural, what does that mean? It means you're looking at a silent schwa, because silent schwas can go under gutturals, just not vocal ones. All right? And then the last characteristic of gutturals, and this is true of all except Resh, is that they have a preference for A-class vowels and A-class compound schwa. What do I mean by that, and why would that be the case? We talked a little bit about this when we talked about the furtive pathak. Remember, furtive pathaks are these sneaky little A sounds that get pronounced right before a strong guttural. Remember Noah, for example, when we learned about Noah? Noah really should just be Nun Holam Chet, but this furtive pathak sneaks in and is pronounced, and it becomes Noah. Noah. Where does that little A sound come from? It comes from the fact that when you're producing a guttural, you're producing it in the back of the throat, aren't you? And A vowels are produced where gutturals are produced. Okay? This is the term for this is called homorganic, right? Organic has to do with how something is made or produced, and homorganic means produced in the same place. A vowels are produced in the back of the throat, gutturals are produced in the back of the throat. And so that means gutturals will have a preference to have A vowels around them whenever they can get them. All right? So gutturals prefer A-class vowels. We have three types of compound schwa. This one, and this one, right? And the transliterations for those are these. So which one of these is the A-class compound schwa? The first, second, or third? The first one, right? So you're going to see whenever a guttural needs a compound schwa, it likes to get the A-class when it can. It'll get some of the other ones, but it prefers an A-class one. Now, the one slight exception to this is that for Aleph often prefers a segol when it can get one. And you're going to see that. You won't see that right now, but you'll see it later. You might be going, yeah, Dr. Marshall, I remember we just did Elohim just a second ago, right? Elohim, what was the compound schwa with Elohim? Yeah, it's the katef segol, right? What about Edom? It was Edom, right? It had the katef segol. So that Aleph is getting something that is very segol-like, right? But you can't always count on that. The word for earth, land, dirt is Adamah. What kind of compound schwa is that? Well, that's the first kind, right? That's the A-class variety there. So the Aleph could get any of those, but it does have a preference for the segol when it can find one, okay? And we're gonna see that as we go on. Now, I don't really need to walk through the rest of this. You're going to see some of these things in full force as we look at the rest of the chapter. And so that brings us to 6.3 in our chapter. So let's go to 6.3 here. Here we have the issue of the article before weak letters. For the most part, 6.3, this is for the most part, not exclusively, the kind of weak letters are guttural weak letters, okay? But there also are there is another situation that you you might have to deal with. When I have to put an article somewhere, remember my article comes standard with a hey. The vowel is called pathak, and then I'm going to attach the hey and the pathak as a prefix on some noun, and this dot will go in the first letter of the noun, and that is a dagesh forte, right? So if I want to say something like the king, start with king, melech, accent that mem, melech, king, a king. I want to say the king, hey, pathak, doubling dot. Okay? I wrote that a little bit too far away. So let's fix that just a hair. You can see Dr. Marshall is such a perfectionist. He'll take a fat hey before there's space. Okay, so ha melech. Ha melech. Got a doubling dot there. All right, so that's all good, right? But what if I have a word like ish, which means man, and I want to say the man? Put the hey here, put the pathak here, put my doubling dot in the aleph. Is that okay? No. Hebrew will not allow the dagesh forte to drop inside that guttural, right? That was our first characteristic of gutturals, right? What are my characteristics? Dagesh forte? No. Vocal shava? No. What do I get instead? Compound shava. Silent shava is okay. Number 3, prefer what? A-class vowels, right? And Aleph prefers sigol when it can get one. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this over and over again in the next 9 months. So you'll be ready to have a baby when we're all done. You will be able to produce it. You'll push it out with no effort. Okay, so this Aleph is going to reject the dagesh forte. He says, I don't take dagesh from anybody, and so I'm going to have a problem now. I can't put the characteristic dagesh forte there. In this situation, the pathak compensatorily lengthens and becomes a long A. Okay, it becomes a kametz. So it's going to still sound like it would have sounded had I been able to write it the way I normally do, ha'ish, ha'ish. Okay, but it's going to be an open syllable now instead of a closed syllable like this one was, because dagesh forte always closes a syllable, right? But I can't close the syllable here, so we're going to act like we're going to reject it and open the preceding syllable, and it'll be a long vowel. Okay, so here's the deal, and I've got a little chart here I'll write down for you. And this really is the most important thing for the rest of this chapter in 6.3. Okay? And here it is. There are basically these forms of the article. Okay, so just jot these down. I could see the article in Hebrew for the most part in these ways. Okay? This is normal. Hey pathak doubling dot. These other 3 happen when I have a weak consonant or an irregular consonant at the beginning of the noun that I'm attaching the article to. Notice that in every situation outside of the norm, what am I missing? I'm missing my dagesh forte, right? So I will either see the pathak and dagesh forte with the article, or I won't. Is the hey there every time? Yes. Now remember, if I'm putting a preposition before the hay, prepositions, inseparable prepositions, eat lots of hay, right? So that hay could go AWOL on us, but it's not its fault. It's been, it's been consumed by another animal. But in every case, the article has a hay, and in most cases, the article's hay is going to take what vowel class? Well, A class, right? A pathak and a kametz are A vowels. One's long and one's short, but they're A vowels. The segol is the only one that really looks strange to us, okay? But anytime I lose the dagesh forte here, anytime the dagesh forte is missing, then one of these three vowels is going to be the way the article gets pointed. Either it'll retain the pathak, or it'll lengthen the pathak to a kametz, or we'll go to a segol altogether. All right?